Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. God bless you this evening.
Thank you all for tuning in. Once again, it is Begin Again, second time around. I'm Dr. Ray Johnson here with my lovely bride.
Alitash Johnson.
And this happens to be a much needed conversation about necessary endings, but more importantly, new beginnings. Once again, it is Begin Again. I happen to be your host. And one of the reasons why I feel like you ought to listen and tune in to this tonight is just simply because I happen to be an author, educator, and leadership development coach and helping you begin again well in your second time or next time around relationship. Honey, why don't you tell them who you are and why you think they ought to listen in with us tonight just a little bit?
Well, you got to have a want to, don't you?
Yeah, you got that right. You got to have a want to.
Oh my goodness, I am a worshiper, a writer, and a woman of God in love with this man of God. But the Spirit draws, and I just thank God that He draws according to what you may have a need of at the time, what you may be thirsting for or hungry for. And God just leads and draws. And I appreciate every time someone listens in. Amen.
Amen. God bless you, Sister Teresa. Thank you for tuning in
Sister
tonight.
Teresa, love you, girl.
And making sure, go ahead and share this with somebody. You know, honey, as we begin to walk through this process, it's not that we've gotten everything right all together. But what we've been doing is we've been talking about something that we developed called the acid test. And don't you all think for one moment that we've gone away from that, because when you look at the acidity level in any kind of chemical, we look at something called the pH balance.
Yes.
And for us, that stands for personal happiness. And so more importantly, inside of the dynamics of relationships, you want to make sure the toxicity level and the acidity is very, very low. God bless you, Elihu King, my lion brother watching tonight. Appreciate you tuning in. Sunita, God bless you. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Yeah. And so, you know, what's important about that is we want the pH levels to be balanced so well that there is happiness. Now, what may be happy to one couple may not necessarily be happy to another couple. And so it's important in second time and next time around relationships, you don't have a whole lot of time to determine what that happiness is. And you've got to be able to measure that toxicity level a little early on so you know whether you need to make your exit strategy or discontinue to take it on the next steps before you decide to say, I do. And so we want to make sure that once you say you do, that you literally do. And so tonight we're just spending some time a little bit, and we're going to kind of have some conversations on some topics that I think are important and necessary for next time around or second time around couples to engage in before they do decide to say I do. And I got a little something special for you at the end of this tonight. And so, you know, I'm always, you know, looking and researching and getting new information and new stuff all the time. And so while I was doing that, you know, the idea came to me about having a discussion of hot topics. Things that couples are engaged in, that they're thinking about connecting into, that are important for them as they look at whether or not they should come together. And here's what I found out. A lot of times people are coming together because somebody's fine. Somebody got the right dimensions, how they make them feel, okay, quote unquote. And let's just be honest. Now, this is a G-rated show. It's not Sunday morning, but let's just be honest, or how the sexual relationship is developed and designing between the two. And so many people make decisions based on that. And when you're coming into a begin again or next time around relationship, that's not something, or those things aren't something that you should make decisions on. But I see it time and time again that people make decisions based upon those things. God bless you to our YouTube audience that's tuning in. And they end up right back to where they started. Just give me a couple of comments upon that.
So I hear what you're saying. You're saying a lot of us, we look at the externals or the things that touch the natural realm, not necessarily the spiritual realm, but they touch those natural senses, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life.
Why you gotta put lust on top of it?
Well, because lust simply means desire.
Yeah.
But I desire to have that person look like that. You know, sometimes we have these lists. I want them to have this, and this. And there's nothing wrong with lists. But when you make that the basis of your decisions and not necessarily the foundation, because our foundation always has to be solid. There always has to be a solid foundation from which to build from. But if we make the foundation of that relationship how the person looks, when they start looking differently and when their looks change or they gain a little weight or they lose too much.
I done gained a couple
you
pounds.
fine, baby, you fine.
Hugh, I got a 16-pack now, bro. That 6-pack is gone.
It's all right, baby. It's still lovable. Still lovable. More to love. More to love. Yeah, you got it over here too. So we balance out in that way. Okay. But when you make the relationship, when you make the foundation, anything that's not a solid foundation, right, you'll find out that when you try to build a structure on top of it, it's not going to last very long. Right. So it doesn't matter if it's the looks, if it's the finances, if it's oh, I can't even think of what was the other one you said? The
looks, the finances, or
the sexual activity,
the sexual activity,
any of that. Let something happen to one or the other, right, and something changes. Right. When that dynamic changes and that brick falls out or comes out, just like that game of Jenga, when that comes out, what comes tumbling down? Right.
The relationship normally does, which is to say, I saw this particular advertisement while scrolling through, and I thought as a part of Hot Topics tonight. And if you got questions, go ahead and put them inside of the chat. No matter if you're watching on the Dominion Man page or my Facebook page or the Dominion Ministries page or Ladies page or Walk of Dominion, whatever you're watching from, if you got questions tonight about questions that should be asked and answered, Hot Topics tonight, before you enter into a second time or next time around relationship, put them inside of the chat. We're going to make sure that we respond tonight. And so that's what we're talking about tonight in tonight's episode. I want us to just take a look at this just real quick, because I think it is important right up here on the screen tonight. Before you get married, here's what it says. Before you get married, discuss bills, parenting styles, credit, debt, religion, how to deal with family, what beliefs will be instilled in your children, childhood traumas. Look at that one. Sexual expectations, partner expectations, financial expectations, family history, mental health history, bucket lists, dream home, careers and education, political views, and whatever else comes to mind. Check the statement at the bottom. It says, love alone is not enough. Love alone is not enough. My goodness, in here. When I saw this, I said, we've got to talk about it tonight, and we've got to discuss it, because so many people, they're coming into the second time and next time around relationships 40, 50, 60, and they haven't discussed these, whether you're 20 or 30. Coming in, if it's a first time relationship, discussing these are so important. You've got to ask the questions and you've got to get answers. Right. So tonight, I thought I would just take a few of them on Hot Topics. We're going to be in this for about the next month or two. So don't feel like if you don't get your question answered tonight, that we won't respond to it, because we will respond to it. But I thought I could come up with 4 F's tonight that would kind of summarize some of that, to begin the questions that you've got to ask and answer. So I'm going to start with number 1 and just put it right up on the screen. When it comes to finances, there's got to be a discussion of bills, income, credit, and debt. Yep. Got to be a discussion of those. Before I get started in it, I'm going to put the spotlight on you. What do you say first about those in terms of couples coming together discussing? What do you say?
Well, this alone can be a very challenging subject to tackle, because you could be, a lot of times when you're coming into the second time around, that initial relationship, whether it was divorce or maybe a long-term relationship that ended, that divorce caused damage to your finances. I mean, it caused a very much of a disruption for me. And I felt like I after the divorce was over, I felt like I had lost everything, even though I worked so hard to get to where I was. But that divorce, I mean, it literally had the rug pulled out under me financially, to where I had to move in with my mother and borrow money from other people who willingly were, gracious enough to lend. And some even allowed me to keep. Others I paid back, because you need to honor your word when you borrow from somebody. Don't just take and not give back. Right. But that whole thing about bills, being honest about where you were. And so I let Bishop know immediately, look, this is my goal. This is where I am right now. And I think my credit score back at that time was like 582. It was very low. Right. This is where I am, and this is where I want to go. Right. And so when it comes to discussing bills and finances, you've got to have some kind of goal in mind. Where do you want to go? Yeah. Because you can be at the bottom, started from the bottom. Now we're here. Right. But we still got ways to go. Right. But when you start, you've got to recognize and locate where you are. First of all, where am I? Where are we financially, and where do you want to go? Because until you locate where you are, you can't plot a course for where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And so as you plot the course and as you set some goals and you start to read, I know my goal was I need to save $10,000 within the next time period because I want this as a backing for when I go for a loan or when I go for the house. This is what I want. I wanted my bills paid off, credit card balances. I wanted them down to a zero with a small active balance so that when you saw the credit, you saw that I could be trusted, a credit worthiness there. But there were some goals that I set aside. And sometimes we don't have all the answers and we have to seek financial advice and financial help. Don't be afraid to watch YouTube videos about finances because they do help. But setting aside, making a goal, hey, I am a person who believes in tithing and in giving, and I probably give away everything. I give away everything.
I ain't gonna say too much. Go ahead.
But I love to. That's how God made me. A giver. Made me a giver. But explaining that, letting your spouse know this is where I am. This is what I want to set aside to do A, B, C, and D. And then making that acknowledgement. This is where we are. How are we going to move from where we are to get to where we're going?
Absolutely. Teresa Harrison up here tonight says, people think if you ask too much, it will turn the person away. Well, listen, Teresa, in a second time or next time around relationship, at the ages that we are, we don't have time to play. Okay, so you've got to ask the tough questions. When you ask the tough questions, I mean, you can't on the first date just come all out with what's your credit score and where you working at, how much money you make, how many kids you have. You do have to get to that point, but it's often about how you begin to ask the question. I see my frat brother Jeffrey Webb in there tonight. Man, I'm looking forward to seeing you in October, Bishop, down in Alabama down there. And so, just tonight we're having a discussion of hot topics, questions that must be asked and answered before you enter into the relationship, or at least you get ready to make the commitment of the ring. I do. Come on, put that ring up there. Put that ring up there. Put that ring up there. Yeah. Before you decide to make that commitment, we've got to make sure that we have that discussion. And so what I would say is that you've got to have disclosure. And so you've got to be honest about where you are. And then here is the big issue, what your expectations are in terms of bills, what your expectation is. I hope that this helps you, Teresa, what your expectation is in terms of income, in terms of credit. Like you said, you wanted your credit score to be at a certain place. And debt, one of the goals for me was to make sure that even throughout the pandemic, I utilized the process of being able to get, my student loans cleared. And I got about 80% of them done to be able to boost my score back up again. But disclosing where you are and being very honest and open will begin to help the relationship move along. And for men, that's a tough place for us because we tend to have an idea of who it is that we want to be and who it is that we think we are. But listen, like you said, the divorce took a toll on you. For me, it took a toll on me as well, because I was still doing a lot of provision and things taking place while the process of divorce was happening because of my caring concern for my own children. So I think that that's so important that you've got to disclose everything, leave nothing on the table before you decide to take the next steps. These areas you've got to discuss: bills, income, credit, debt. Lay it out on the table and be willing to walk all the way through it. Before I go to the next one,
let me say something about that.
Let me check the comments. Go ahead.
Finances can be very, very touchy. You can often hear what a person is talking about to know where they are or where they're going. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Listen to the conversation and where that person is going. And the most important thing about discussing bills and finances and debt and credit and all of that is you have to build trust with the other person to know that they feel comfortable enough to share that with you. So it will take time. It's not something that necessarily you discuss on the first date, but then you don't want to go down the road.
You can't get 6 months in and they had the conversation.
Never had the conversation. And then all of a sudden everything blows up. There's got to be a level of understanding with the two people of where they're going. What kind of relationship are you trying to build as you're moving forth? And so I won't spend too much more time on that.
Let me just mention this comment from one of my frat brothers. She says he's developed something called RVO, Relationship Variable Questionnaire. And he said, email it to me. Somebody put this in the chat for me real quickly. RayJJ8596 @gmail.com. And we'll share that with our listening audience. Again, RayJJ 8596@gmail.com, and we'll share that with our listening audience. Come on, let's go to number 2, the area that there's got to be conversation in. This one's going to be interesting. Check it out. Forging. And what I mean by that is that there's got to be a discussion about parenting styles. And in the discussion about parenting styles, pending upon where you are in terms of the second time or next time around relationships. So like, I know for us, most of my children are grown. My hand involved in their lives through their teen and preteen years already been felt in. The baby too, not so much, but they're 19 or they're 20 and 18 now. So my parenting style and your parenting style a little bit different, but the forging process, so important to have a discussion about that, about how things are done, because remember this, the way that you did things in one experience is not always the way that you do things in another experience. And even, you and your older sons at the 28 and 31 years old, a different process of how you relate and orient to them than the others. But there's a forging and a coming together process where you want to be able to get together on the same page. And you've got to have the conversations about it in terms of discussing it, and not wait until you get in it and then find out, oh, we just really totally different about how we have certain views and how we see things. Go ahead on.
And sometimes you can't pre-plan that. Because kids are kids. And the experiences that you've had in your previous relationship have a lot of impact on how you raise your children. I think in the beginning for me, I did a lot of overcompensating, a lot of overcompensating. And because of the overcompensating, I think my children are walking around here now, because of overcompensating, I was giving and not really holding them accountable to what they needed to be held accountable to as far as chores and everything else, and taking on the responsibility of growing and maturing. And so when you have situations where you're coming out of a relationship where you sometimes as a parent, I don't know how I can't speak for the men, but as women, sometimes we feel really bad about, I had to leave the relationship, and you don't want your child to dishonor the father in any way, or disrespect. But as a certainty that you had to get out to save your life. And so being able to relate that, you can't always relate that or tell them everything, because you have to use discretion, wisdom in that. But I had to recognize and take an accountability for my own overcompensation. But God will give you wisdom. And I thank God for Bishop, because he brings the balance in. Sometimes I think he thought I was, he's like, what are you doing? Stop giving them. Just stop it. So I think, he brought the balance in.
Well, that's the difference between the dynamic of male and female. Mothers are nurturers, fathers are guiders, and fathers are really interested. Any man that's worth his salt, you really are interested in your children going further and doing better than you are, and having the next stage up. I wish there would be some honest men who would give me some hearts and thumbs up inside of the comment section on that right there. And so in order to get there, cultivation has got to happen. And we understand the world is not going to be easy. It's not going to be kind. It's not going to be nice. And things are not going to be given to you. You got to earn your keep and earn your way. And so good fathers prepare their children for the future and the toughness of the world. And that begins in a forging moment right where you are, which is to say this, we just did a wedding this weekend, and God bless you to Lady, y'all. She was in Fredericksburg, drove all the way back, ran the Sunday service, and then was the usher at the wedding while I was there setting up and officiating, happened to marry. And God bless Diana and Frank, who made me watch. They're on their way to Hilton Head, South Carolina, now on their honeymoon. And so now watch this. I want to talk about forging, because as I begin to officiate the ring ceremony, about how the goldsmith and the silversmith causes the ring to become this never-ending circle, how it's heated up in the flame and in the fire. As a matter of fact, why don't I just do this? I want you to take a look at this real quick.
Holding in mind,
I'm going to talk to you about it.
Is that these are forged in the fire by the goldsmith. And what many may not know is the ring is put together by heating it up in the flame so that it melts. And as it melts, all the impurities rise to the surface. There is nothing like marriage that will cause the impurities within to rise to the surface. But what the goldsmith does is that he wipes all the impurities off before he begins to forge the metal into this round ring. There will be parts in your relationship one to another where they would seem like you're just getting on each other's nerves. But what's happening is that's God making you one. And he's forging you together to become a round family where you can't tell where one ends and where the other one begins. So as you look down at this one, you'll be reminded of the covenant of the sign that you have one to another with each other. Such is the covenant of union of a husband and a wife.
Wow, such is the covenant communion of a husband and a wife. Yeah. If you really couldn't hear all of that, I was talking about how the silversmith heats up the metal first. It melts down, impurities rise to the top, and then he sweeps out all the impurities. And what happens in forging is there are going to be some rough spots. There are going to be some difficult places. There's going to be some tough places. But I often say this: nothing develops your spirituality and your character and formating you in terms of who you are like marriage. That's because there are going to be some rough moments. And when you bring children into the mix, it's going to be some tough and some tight places, but it's getting all of the impurities out of each of you. Why? It's the reason why that's important for you to have the conversation is that you can minimize some of the process of friction so that the impurities rising to the surface won't be so difficult and won't be so tough and so hard. Tonight, we're having this conversation about hot topics, and we're really talking about conversations you ought to have before you enter in. We talk to relationship with each other. We talk about finances a little bit, forging a little bit inside of the fire. Here's the next one. Now, this one is going to be a doozy. Do not engage and come together until you have this one. And remember, if you got comments or if you've got questions, put them inside of the chat. I'll try to go round robin with those. Come on, let's put this next one in here. Here we go, right here. You've got to have the conversation about how to deal with your family. You've got to disclose to your spouse about who is who or what is what. Now, I know it's a little bit funny, but come on, some hearts and thumbs up. Y'all know I'm right about it on that right there. You've got to have a conversation about who the kleptos are. You got to have the conversations about who's going to ask for money. You got to have the conversations about who not going to pay you back. You got to have a conversation about some of the more unsavory characters in the family. So what the issues are, you cannot allow your intended other to come into the new family not dynamic and not disclose to them. I'm gonna make another statement about that in just a second, because it's so important that after you disclose that your spouse is aware so that they know who they're talking to and who they're orienting with in terms of the dynamic of how to interrelate inside, because now that becomes their family if you're going to move toward matrimony. Go ahead.
Yes, and that's important. Now they've been that family member for a whole lot longer than they've known you.
Right.
And so you've got to lend some respect to the fact that there is history with that relationship. There's history in that family.
Yes.
And you have to be careful too of anyone who tries to isolate you away from your family, because when they're trying to isolate you or get you away from your family, those are some of those signs of abuse. You have to really, really be careful about that.
Yes.
And there's some things that my family noticed in other relationships that I wish I had listened to their advice on before committing to something that caused detriment later on. Sometimes your family can see things that you don't because you're so in love and they're so perfect. And no, I've been waiting for this. This is the right one this time. They may be, but maybe this is not the season that the two of you need to be together. You got to weigh some things out. Everything takes time. Wait for the blessing. Wait for the things to manifest and come to fruition. Some things, fools rush in is what they say. Fools rush in, but you want to take your time and really believe that this is what God is leading me to, or this is the right decision for my life and for my children's life, if children are involved. This is the right decision for my financial life. Anytime your finances are being drained constantly and consistently, you have to ask, why am I giving so much and this person is not returning? You have to ask those hard questions, because everything else may seem okay, but then at the base bottom of it, that person really doesn't know how to handle finances, and will lead you to bankruptcy and ruin, and will cause a whole lot of heartache. And that's when you really ask, what does love have to do with this? Because you put me in the ditch over here, brother. That's not love, you know, or sister, because some women just like to shop. They want no accountability for what they do with the money. They just want you to bring the money home and let them shop and do whatever. Yes, I'm going to call some of us women out. I'm not one of them because I work hard for the money. Okay, I work hard for the money. But there's got to be some balance in there. So that's all that's what I would say. I'm gonna
go back and just add this right back up in here. Discuss bills, parenting styles. Look at that: credit, debt, religion, how to deal with your family, and then what beliefs will be instilled in your children. We're gonna have to come back to that one at another date, at another time, because that's a powerful one right there. You've got to have the discussion about who's who in the family. And I would dare say you cannot be afraid to engage the family and show the family who you are, because don't think for a moment that now I need to on both sides, male and female, we live in a different world and in a different age of social media. Don't think for a moment that your spouse's intended other, that their family members, they are not Googling you, they are Googling you. They're going down your social media
background checks.
They're doing background checks, police reports. They're gonna check you out completely and fully. And if you ain't got nothing to hide, that's not an issue for you. But you need to know that going in, because they wouldn't be good family members if they did not. And then sometimes they may hear things about you that may not be true. You've got to be willing to live some of that stuff down if you're intended with being with your significant other. I could go a whole lot of different places with that, but I don't have as much time. But we get ready to get out of here. Come on, last one for the night. Here we go. You've got to talk about frustrations. And by frustrations, I mean traumas and trials. You've got to be honest about the experiences that you had prior to this relationship, so that your spouse knows what to look for and what to stay away from. Here it is, so that you will not become triggered. Because if you don't discuss it, and then all of a sudden something pops up that reminds them of where they were, and there's been no discussion with you, friction can develop in the relationship. And now all of a sudden, when that friction develops, you're thinking to yourself, you've done something wrong, when really it is just a past trauma that preludes, or that kind of precedes where you are today, that causes things to now kind of begin to go awry. And now all of a sudden you're headed towards Splitsville when it's unnecessary.
Right, because the person that perpetrated the original act is not the person that you're with right now. Now, the other side of that too is what is, again, we'll go back to the conversation. What do they talk about? Are they stuck? And, you know, if you're not able to lead them out into present reality and they stay there, there may be a need for counseling, not necessarily to cut them off and discard them and to throw them away. I'm not saying that at all. But sometimes
I went to counseling.
Yeah, sometimes people need a help with recognizing the fact that counseling is the right option for them at the time. They may not realize that they're stuck. Some people don't realize it, but they don't even realize that the hurt is causing them to hurt other people. But when you hear the conversation and it keeps rehearsing the same thing over and over again, then you have to ask, have they really been able to heal from it? Or is there still some areas that need to be pulled out through a conversation, through a counselor, or maybe there's some a spiritual leader, someone that they can talk to and that they trust, because you have to have a safe space to open up and talk about trauma and talk about trials. You know, now there's some people, you know, they bleed all over everybody. Every time they see somebody, they tell their story. Every time they see a stranger in the store, they're telling their story. What happened to them? You know, my husband did this, my wife did this, and I mean, just total strangers, but they're constantly bleeding. Forrest, run! They're bleeding out into anybody who would listen, because they haven't found they haven't really found the safe space and the maturity to know that this thing is really bothering them, and they need to deal with it, and they need to confront it, and not tell everybody. And you know, everybody your business. You don't need to tell everybody your business, but to places and people that you can trust, and so you want to be able to confide in and have them be a type person that say, hey, you know, I don't know exactly what to say to you. I don't know exactly how to help you, but I can help you find some resources where you can get some help. And the thing that's beautiful about family, thing that's beautiful about friends, there are different people that you can talk to in the family that aren't going to share everything, but you have to be careful, because you don't want to tell negative stuff to family members, because they will hold on to it.
That's the other side.
A whole lot longer.
That's the other side.
That's
the other side I wanted to go to. So you got to be careful what you say, because they'll hold on to something, or they'll hold on to something that was told to them, and they'll watch it with one eye open and one eye closed to see if this thing is true. But if you're on the up and up, you just live through that. But you want to be careful, because now remember, your spouse is coming into this family, and so they've got to now operate and dwell with the family. And so now you moved on, but they're still holding on to it.
They're stuck to that image in their mind.
The image in their mind that was created. And now all of a sudden you're in a real tough predicament, in a real tough moment. I wish we had more time, y'all. This 25, 30 minutes goes by really, really quick. But listen, this has been Second Time Around, Begin Again. And we spent some time tonight talking a little bit about hot topics. I want you to begin to just wake up with Lady tomorrow morning. I hope this has been a blessing with somebody. Make sure you share this, get it with a friend. Keep putting your comments in. We'll respond to them as we go. God bless you. Take care.
Love you.
God bless. Bye-bye.